How we doing? How we doing? It's Mike D here from According to Hip Hop. I have the incredible Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III here with me, and we're going to be talking about his new book, Dancing in the Darkness. You may have heard of Dr. Moss's name before. He is the senior pastor at Trinity United Church of Christ, in Chicago, Illinois, famously known as the former church of President Barack Obama. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Good to be with you, Mike D.
Great, great, great. Appreciate that. I know a lot of people would be like, okay, well, this is a hip hop platform. This is a pastor on this platform. The way this came together was, we had mutual acquaintances saying, you were a big hip hop fan. Hip hop is turning
Yeah.
50. And, hip hop is not just, the kids' music anymore. Like, hip hop has some age on it, has some history on it. And I was reading that you speak about bridging that gap between religion, and hip hop. Can you kind of expound upon a little bit of that?
Well, hip hop is connected to the broader black historical and spiritual tradition. You got your five pillars of hip hop. We've got the oral, the rapping. You've got the use of technology of DJing. You have the graffiti, the art. You have break dancing, the utilization of black kinetic energy, and then you have knowledge, the search, the distribution, the use of knowledge. And that in itself is a spiritual rooting that comes out of the African tradition. And the African tradition is always a spiritual tradition because we recognize that the spirit, that God flows and functions in all aspects. And so whether someone is spitting lyrics or whether someone is tagging a wall, they are also utilizing something that is ancient and that is spiritual. And that's one of the reasons that I love hip hop so much.
It's the message, and it's a whole lot in there. And there's a level of spirituality in how I guess we all connected with hip hop too. I know in my era, but you probably came up during a time where hip hop is really cultivating itself. Like, do you have some early memories of when hip hop kind of, where you gravitated to hip hop the first couple times?
Oh, absolutely. So I came up during the golden age of hip hop, what is called the golden age. So hip hop is becoming kind of a new national voice for black people. So without a doubt, the brother that just blessed me in a myriad of ways was Rakim. And then hearing his level of lyricism and then the creation of hooks the way that Rakim created. So the way that I see it is you have Rakim, and then you have from Rakim, you then move to someone like Nas. There would be no Nas if there wasn't someone like a Rakim. And then Nas takes that to a completely different level with the Illmatic. But, I was a big fan of, the kind of native tongue movement, absolutely loved everybody from Tribe to leaders of the New School to the Jungle Brothers, Queen Latifah, that whole aesthetic along those lines. And then, of course, the group that came out of Money Earning Mount Vernon, that whole group of CL Smooth, man, and Heavy D, and they were all, friends. They were all friends. I mean, that's how they got on with each other. And to witness, CL Smooth and the Chocolate Boy Wonder, who was just an amazing producer, seeing them early on in their careers, and seeing them where they are now. But those are like memories of as a teen, for me and in college. And those became the people who were like, oh man, this is the vibe that I want to be connected to.
You're naming some of my personal favorites, and I've read that again you integrate with jazz as well. You were introduced to jazz by your older sister, and you're naming people who do have that jazz and hip hop flair. Obviously, the knowledge in there with Rakim and Nas. I was reading the book, and I was reading the section where you spoke about the scene and Do the Right Thing. And Public Enemy kind of jumped out in my mind as well. I love the way you correlated that scene and Do the Right Thing to, your situation with, with being biased, and we do that a lot on our show as well, because a lot of the times we're naming some of our favorite MCs or, favorite acts. sometimes the women don't get mentioned as much, right?
Right.
Can you explain a little bit of that chapter on bias? Just to kind of give it a brief summary.
Yeah. So I used the story of an experience that happened to me. We were lifting up activists in the athletic realm. Everybody from like a Jack Johnson, Muhammad Ali. We're just kind of going down the list. We're lifting up the activists in during the Olympics when they were lifting their fists up, and all of those individuals. And we put together this bulletin cover. I mean, I was really excited about it. But it was all brothers who were in the room that were putting together the bulletin cover. Now, normally our team is men and women. And so Sunday comes along, and then Minister Janae Colvin, who was on our team at the time, led actually our worship and arts meetings. She was out that Sunday, or that's the time we had the meeting. And she said, I opened up the bulletin, Rev, and I saw all brothers. I didn't see any sisters. Said, the people who were lifting up BLM, Black Lives Matter, was the WNBA. And I was like, oh, gosh. I said, I'm a brother. I said that the technical director of the media department was a brother. The editor that Sunday I was like, it was all brothers. And our initial bias, because we were looking at things from our perspective. Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is who I love, so on and so on. We were going from our own perspective and didn't realize that we were shutting out sisters in the process.
Right.
And that not only happens in just individual communication, when just brothers are talking and say, hey, here's my favorite artist. It happens in the broader scale of policy formation, talking about history. When we talk about the liberation and freedom movement, we miss that the majority of the organizers were women.
Yeah.
So you can't talk about Mississippi organizing unless you talk Fannie Lou Hamer. You have to talk Ella Baker, Septima Clark. You have to talk Angela Davis if you're going to begin to talk about the Black Power movement. And so often as men, it's just typical, just like people do that, just like other communities will miss out on the broad nature. We do it also.
Yes. And I think that's a poignant point. I mean, I run into that with my fiance all the time when we're just having regular discussions. And when you said, you're seeing it through, I'm paraphrasing it here. You said in the book, I'm seeing it through my male eyes and my male experience. I really, gravitated to that. I'm like, I didn't mean anything by it, but it's just a, inherent bias that was already there. Now, speaking of the civil rights movement and some of those figures, you do have a personal connection to the civil rights movement, and your parents were introduced and married by the great Dr. King. Can you expound upon some of those things and how that kind of shaped you early on?
Sure. My mother and father. My father was an organizer. He was one of the organizers for what was called the Atlanta Sit-In Movement, that desegregated in Atlanta. And my mother was one of the office managers for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Wow. So both of them were a part of the movement in kind of different ways. And they got married during that time period in 66, and had a engagement party that was thrown for them by Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King during the SCLC retreat, where they were planning the Poor People's Campaign. So all of that is kind of integrated in their history and how they got together.
Wow, and I love what you said in the book about Dr. King and how early on you probably still are, as we all are, still a big fan of Malcolm and his approach and the way that he went about things. But when it was explained to you that Dr. King's movement allowed everyone to be involved, I never looked at it in that viewpoint. And one of the things that I was thinking while I was reading that was like, I guess what was really passed down to you about the experience your parents went through with Dr. King while you were growing up?
One of the things that my father used to say, he said he would hate it when people would use the word integration. I mean, he hated it. He's like, I'm not trying to integrate anywhere. It's desegregation. I'm not talking about taking away Black institutions. I believe in Black empowerment. This means we should have access in every aspect of this society that we not only built, but our genius and our culture created and maintained. And so he said, I want access to the wealth. I want access to the institution. I want access to the doggone library. That was a big thing for him. He wanted access to the doggone library. He's like, I want every book up in there because those books speak about me. And so they always said, don't ever say integration. Don't ever say assimilation. We're not trying to assimilate. We're not trying to integrate. We're trying to empower. It's desegregation. And what was interesting, all of the older people who were actually in the movement, they never used the term integration.
Wow.
It blew me away. He said, and if you said integration, they would look at you funny, like, you mean desegregation, Otis? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. But scholars would say integration. Media people would say integration. But those who were foot soldiers, they would say, no, this is desegregation. We're not trying to get rid of black teachers and black schools and things of that nature. We're talking about equal access, meaning that I have access freely without violence anywhere in this country. That's very different.
It is.
Than someone saying, oh, I want to integrate into your school. No. One of the things that they told me, they said, we ended up losing so many black institutions because of the ideology of integration. We were just trying to desegregate because they were giving us old books. The sewer systems weren't working. He was going on and said, they segregated the sewer system. I was like, segregated the sewers? He said, yes. He said, even your poop.
Wow.
He said, so he said, our pipes didn't even work appropriately. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. He said, that's what desegregation was about, that we want to have access to all of the capital, the power, and the institutions everybody else does. And we build our community in the process.
You're right. And it's interesting how the media narratives can change, not just the terminology, but the overall approach to how people view history. And this is stuff that wasn't even that long ago. I mean, clearly your parents were involved and active in this movement. This is like one generation removed.
Right.
One thing that I really loved, I think it was in the first chapter, when you were talking about love without justice. Can you kind of expound upon that? And I love the examples you gave in there too.
Thank you. Well, the idea is that the two central virtues that we need for internal development and for transformation of these yet to be United States of America, this democratic experiment, is love and justice. Love without justice is just sentimentality. Justice without love, my father likes to say it, he says, becomes brutality. It becomes retribution and not justice seeking. But when love and justice are married together, they end up producing two children, one by the name of liberation and the other by the name of transformation. So you merge those two things together. If you operate with love and justice internally as virtues, then it changes you. And if you operate it in the public square, it changes our society. And that's what the movement is about, this idea that not only loving myself, but recognizing someone else, the imprint of the divine on everybody I encounter. And then means that how do I build a just society where everybody can flourish? And, I should share some stories about Howard Thurman and other people in the book and give a lot of historical pieces about, how do we move in that direction. And that's hip hop at its best as an art seeks to say knowledge of self, that coming to the 5%er aspect,
right,
and talking about loving yourself, but also raising fundamental questions as Nas does in King's Disease, and talking about the song Beef. What happens when we are not justice seeking? We don't want to see a society where everybody flourishes.
It kind of makes me think about, the redirecting your rage chapter. And I was going to kind of correlate that there as well. I think that's a very powerful chapter, by the way. And just about, I don't want to say diffusing situations, but one thing hip hop is, even though it does have, the knowledge aspect, hip hop has the ability to get people riled up as well. And I was going to ask you about drill music in Chicago and just the Chicago scene and the hip hop scene with the youth, and how, I guess, how do we get a hold and turn some of those situations that could be negative into more of a, a positive, using those same, I guess, chakras.
That's a great question. So the first thing is that we have to begin to kind of develop our institutions so that we are teaching the idea of love, of justice, as I mentioned before, but this idea of rage. Anger is not a problem. Everybody has anger. Anger can be righteous. Anger can be transformative. Anger can fuel you to do some great things. But rage is a poison that removes you from being able to see the person you're engaging as having the imprint of the divine upon them. When you move into a rage, I use the example, not in the book, but whenever I'm talking, especially with young people, to talk about Muhammad Ali is one of the best examples of how rage can be destructive for your opponent. And Muhammad Ali, I think, is one of the, I think it was the Thriller in Manila. No, it was Thriller in Manila, or was it in the Rumble in the Jungle? I'm not sure which one he gives the commentary saying that I knew I couldn't beat the person because I was faster, but they were stronger than me. And I believe it was Foreman that he said, if I can get him into a rage, he will lose his form. And so he would hit him and say, talk about his mama. He hit him again and said, he was just talking junk the entire fight until the man went from angry to being in a rage. Once he got him into a rage, he said, now I can knock you out because you don't have any form, because you are now poisoned by this idea. And so often in the Black community, we've lost our form because we have allowed the spirit of rage to take over. And that's what's happening in portions of Chicago, where we have to build our institutions and be able to teach in such a way so this young population can use the gift and artistry of hip hop, not as to spread a poison of rage, but to communicate the possibilities of what we can be. And when we use it in a powerful way, you have artists like No Name, gifted local hip hop artist who's communicating. She has an amazing song called Casket Pretty. I mean, it's heartbreaking when she talks about this is the time when you witness and see a beautiful child pretty, beautiful, dressed up. She said, I don't want to see anybody casket pretty anymore. I mean, that's a powerful piece that she's using. I mean, it's heartbreaking, but she wrote it specifically because she says that her responsibility is the responsibility to the South and West Side of Chicago.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone picking out outfits for the 10-year-old anymore for a casket to be pretty. And she learned that because she got connected with a community and her family that were passing on spiritual values. We have to do the same thing so that drill music does not become the defining aspect of Chicago's contribution to hip hop. It needs to be, Chance and Common and Kanye and, all of these other brilliant artists who are bringing something unique to the table.
I got one of my best friends is from Chicago, and we're both huge hip hop fans. And I know when we were going to college together, he was a huge Common guy. I'm from Atlanta, so I was a huge Outkast guy, right? And so I've had a tremendous respect for what Chicago has been able to build. But I've also noticed that, it's like two different dynamics. You'll have a Common and a Crucial Conflict, Do or Die, and then you'll have somebody like Kanye, and it's a beautiful thing though, and I think that Atlanta and Chicago are very similar in that light. But I love what you said there, and I think that it's tragic to hear those sentiments in songs. Like when you said that, I thought about Nas on Memory Lane on Illmatic when he was like 18, 19. Talking about I reminisce on Park Jam. I mean, shot with a sheep coat. Like that's terrible for a youth to have those kind
Right.
of experiences and articulate it in that way. And you think about the people who grew up around them who don't have the talent to articulate it in that way. Like, what's their outlet?
Right. Yeah. How you are we witness articulation of trauma and grief without the appropriate foundation. And that's what's happening. Someone is communicating their trauma and their grief. And I might add, by the way, that Common is a member of our church. So he grew up at Trinity, and great brother doing wonderful work on Broadway and doing everything now. And has been a real leader. They are currently working on building a studio on the South Side where people can do production and transforming economically the South Side of Chicago.
Oh, nice. Common's one of the all-time greats. Do you have a favorite Common song or album?
Oh, I used to love her.
I used to love it's your favorite. B is my favorite Common
classic.
album. Yeah. I wrote an article on ranking Common's albums before. Yeah, it's a great catalog. I think B is my favorite album. Looking back on it, it used to be Resurrection at number 2, but I might be going like Water for Chocolate personally.
I was about to say, like Water for Chocolate is hot. It really is. And I love Common live with the Roots. That when he guest stars on the Roots. And I think the Roots are, very underrated. Black Thought is very underrated. Especially Common and Black Thought do just a tremendous job freestyle. I mean, they really are very good freestyle hip hop artists that if you get them to do, because some artists, I'm not going to mention names, are not great freestylers. Like Mos, Yasin is a great freestyle artist. He can go.
Yeah.
Jay, he's a great freestyle artist, and his memory is unbelievable. But I love to hear Common do freestyle because he's quite gifted at it.
Common to go up there and do some b-boying and everything. He'll give you the whole hip hop experience. So being from Chicago or in Chicago, I know you're a basketball fan, and I was told that ahead of time, of course. What did you watch that LSU and Iowa game? Because I know we were just talking about talking trash and getting people out of their game.
We had a program going on at the same time, and I couldn't watch it.
Okay. Did you hear about the hoopla after the fact?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh
yeah. All right. I'm gonna say this. I watched the game, right?
Okay.
And I wanted to support LSU because our daughter, she went to LSU her freshman year and transferred over to Emory or whatnot. Anyway, the game was good. They were letting them play, and I'm a big NBA fan. Like, I'm more of NBA than NCAA. But the NBA's kind of gotten to the point where they're calling games so close, and they don't let them do anything. They don't let them talk trash or anything like that. In this game, I felt like they were just letting them play, and it was very entertaining in that way. And I didn't think that there was going to be any backlash for any of that stuff because, again, I grew up watching, Jordan play the Knicks play Indiana, and this is just commonplace. This is basketball. So
that's part of the game. It's trash talking, and both players didn't have an issue with the trash talk. It was the people around.
Yeah, society. And it made me think like, okay, well, is there any future for the NBA to be anywhere near where it used to be if people have such a problem with trash talking?
That's a great one. We need to have I would love to have a conversation about just basketball with you, because I remember, to tell you a story. I remember when I was young, I was given tickets by my father to go to a Cavs game. And the Cavs at that time, Ron Harper was playing for the Cavs, who eventually ended up playing for Chicago at one point. But Ron Harper was playing for the Cavs. He came out of Miami University in Ohio. And, he was a new star of the Cavs and whatnot. And so they're playing the Bulls. And Ron Harper dunks on Jordan.
Ron Harper was jumping out the gym at that point, for the people who don't remember.
Bruh, oh my God. Jordan then, the next possession, took the ball. No, Harper dunked on Jordan and said, "My house." And Jordan then, he's like, okay, took the ball coast to coast, dunked on Harper, and then looked at the crowd and just mouthed, "My house." He then went on to score 55 points that night.
Every house was Jordan's house in that time period, man.
I mean, I was like, that's my Jordan memory. It was absolutely just sell it. But I mean, you could trash talk. That was a part of the game. And I don't know why you would want to trash talk Jordan, because you think you've been hyped up as the new whatever superstar in the NBA because you've been recently drafted. So
everybody has their story where they tried
trash
Jordan. Everybody has their story where they tried Jordan their first time playing him. I remember Reggie Miller telling that story. But I will give Reggie Miller this. And the Knicks and John Starks. They didn't back down from Jordan. And as a kid, as a Jordan fan, I loved that. I was like, you know what? I'm a Jordan fan, but I love the fact that these guys aren't scared of Jordan.
I love watching Reggie Miller play, man. I mean, and I think to this day, Spike Lee feels that he should have shut his mouth.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, do you think Reggie Miller played with rage or controlled rage?
Oh, man, he was controlled because Reggie was so smooth. He's like, that would fuel him. He's like, oh, you going to talk smack about me? Let me hit a couple of 3-pointers and then look at you. I mean, it was just, there was no rage in there. There was none whatsoever. Now, there was some anger. He's like, I'm going to show you who I am. It would fuel him. Just like one of my favorite players, I love AI. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm an AI fan because that cat played with such intensity, and it wasn't a reckless abandon, but it was like he put his body on the line going to the hole, and was just an amazing athlete to be able to witness. And he had just such a swagger in the way in which he played, man. I mean, AI was just poetry to watch, man.
Yeah, he was.
Now, let me ask you this question.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. If I'm gonna name a ball player, you tell me who would be the hip hop equivalent. Okay. If I said Magic Johnson, who would you say would be the hip hop equivalent to Magic Johnson?
The hip hop equivalent to Magic Johnson. That would be somebody who, you know what? I might go Snoop with that. He makes everybody better. He can collaborate with any, you know what I mean? Like he's comfortable in any and every environment and willing to work with everybody. And he's somebody that obviously everybody likes, you know?
So where would Kobe be? Who would he be the hip hop equivalent?
Kobe. For different reasons, I might say Lil Wayne. I might say Wayne. Because I know Wayne was kind of... you know what? No, I won't say that. I'm going to say Kanye.
Kanye? Okay.
Kanye's Kobe. Definitely.
Okay, nice. Okay.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, I hear you're a big Kendrick Lamar fan.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I hear you're a big Kendrick Lamar fan.
Yeah, man.
Kendrick has incredible lyricism, and album for album, he's pretty much been flawless. Some people have, criticized his recent effort, but for the most part, he's been critically acclaimed. Do you have some of your? What's your go-to Kendrick project? And I know you use some of Kendrick's lyrics in some of your some of your sermons, some of your speeches. What are some of your go-to lines for Kendrick?
Well, I love To Pimp a Butterfly, but Big Steppers, because it's a confessional, because I feel like he's doing public therapy, as he's walking through each set and each song. There's something really powerful about that kind of public confessional. But the other thing I love about Kendrick is his collaborator, Dave Free, who does his videos. I think Dave Free is one of the most underrated, brilliant producers / directors in the nation. Period. I mean, what they've been able to do visually for music in general is extraordinary. It really is extraordinary.
A friend of mine who's in theater, shout out to Rambe, he came to me and was he's a Kendrick fan as well, and he told me that, Kendrick's albums and videos, they play out like theater. And then I kind of listened to them different, especially To Pimp a Butterfly. When you listen to that album, you could put it on a stage play. I feel like the same thing with Mr. Morale. And I think that Dave Free does a really great job of, showing that through visuals as well. Yeah. And it's incredible stuff to watch because I think those guys are making history.
It is absolutely beautiful.
Now, what would you say are some of the lyrics that you go to and inspire you from
Oh,
Kendrick?
man. All right, man. All right. And I love
Yeah,
myself.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I love the fact that it's live. They're using
Mm-hmm.
the Isley Brothers um, guitar within there. That's underneath that is
Yeah.
just is brilliant. It's just a brilliant because I think what I love about Kendrick is his deep respect for tradition.
Yeah.
He's because if you listen to the music and also the references, but the way the production is designed, it's like a class in the black musical aesthetic, and that's what I love. That's why I'm a big Jay Dilla fan. I like the kind of because he also is giving you this education around the brilliance of black music.
You're naming
When you
some of
when you
my
get something like Jay
favorites,
Dilla.
man. Like we could talk for hours on this. Yeah, Dilla's the truth. Dilla's
Yeah.
music makes you feel something,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's soulful, it's thoughtful. I mean the fact that when he did the light with Common and he takes Bobby Caldwell. He basically takes the Bobby Caldwell song.
Yeah.
And people don't even know it's Bobby Caldwell that's singing under the light. And he just shifts it just enough, turns the treble a little bit, and then adds this beat underneath. And got this brilliant song. But he's taking, a lot of black folk thought Bobby Caldwell was black. Well, that's a whole other story. But I mean, Dilla, man, is, they have his mixer in the Smithsonian. Which is just, I think, shows the kind of impact that he's had on music. But I think everybody who had an encounter with him, from D'Angelo. I mean, D'Angelo's music is influenced by Dilla. The Roots influenced by Dilla. You have Erykah Badu influenced by Dilla. Stokely influenced by Dilla. So Dilla, man, is, I think, would be, if there's a Mount Rushmore when you're talking about hip hop, I think he has to be on it.
I really think with that whole neo soul wave that happened in the early 2000s, I think that's kind of off the back of the work that Dilla was doing at that time. Like he was the battery in the back of that. Dilla's music makes you want to rap though. When you hear like a Dilla beat or instrumental, even if you never rapped before, you want to go out there and bust
Don't try.
down.
You listen to some of those donuts and you're like, okay, let me try something here.
Have you ever attempted to rhyme, like in your influential years or in the years where hip hop was very influential to you as a teen? Have you ever tried to get behind the mic?
No, I do poetry. I do spoken word, but I never. No, not rhyming. Not me. Poetry, spoken word has been my wheelhouse, and I understand how to stay in my lane. And I was part of a breakdance crew back in the day. That we used to perform in and around Cleveland, Ohio. But no. I mean, that's a special gift. I think that I love to hear someone who really has the gift to be able to rhyme.
It is a special thing to hear Rakim on the mic, like
Oh my
God
God.
gift right there. Well, before we get out of here, and leave the people with some thoughts. Can you talk about the power of community?
I think that's one of the central things you hear people speak and use that word, that the power of community is the unique tapestry that is created that allows a diverse group of people from the same community to build a quilt. And within the African American community, quilting is taking pieces that really don't belong together and recycle them and make something that can be wrapped around your body and warm you. And community does that. And when community is rooted in the depths of spirituality, it has not only the power to warm you, but also to nurture you. And that is the Black church at its best. When we're functioning out of Black spirituality, not white evangelicalism and things like that. I'm talking about Black spirituality, that it has the ability to warm, but it also has the ability to nurture. And still, some of our best musicians are flowing out of the sheds of these moments within these small Black communities that demand excellence and creativity.
You speak of the black church, and I know I said we were about to wrap up, but that made me think of a question that I did have on tap. Um, what do you think that the black church can do in this era to reach the youth? And do you think that there is a disconnect with the youth in the black church currently?
Oh, I think there definitely is. I think that one of the things that the black church has to do is become black again. There are black churches with black people, and then there's the black church tradition. The black church tradition is Frederick Douglass and Ida B. Wells and Harriet Tubman, is a liberation and transformation. The black church tradition is a space that can embrace folks who are seeking knowledge of self and also lift up and partner with those who are going through their fast during Ramadan, because we recognize that we want to liberate the entire community, though I'm rooted in this one particular tradition. Just being part of a community with or a church that has some black people, that's very American. That's seeking to assimilate and integrate versus empower. And the church is going to have to, one, be authentic in its communication, two, seek transformation in the community, and three, be unashamed and unapologetic about its roots, its culture, where it comes from, and this message of this prophet and this brother, this man by the name of Jesus, and that this is not a white guy. It's not a blonde, blue-eyed guy. This is a person of African descent. I was on a podcast earlier today, and I said, when the black church engages its roots, it knows that you can turn over a black book. One of the best books about black people is one called the Bible. And you can go from Genesis and Revelation and learn about the movement and power and creativity and artistry of black people, whether it's the psalmist or the prophet, or even listening to the epistles of Paul. And the black church has to turn back to that direction if it wants to be able to gain an ear and a connection with young people.
I love it. Well, tell people when and where they can, I guess where they can get the book. And I just appreciate you coming by. This was powerful. And any closing thoughts?
Oh man, well, Mike D, I want to just thank you for the work that you're doing. We need voices such as yours that are sharing not only the message of hip hop, but communicating to the hip hop generation. So I'm really honored. I'm honored to be on this podcast with you. And the listeners can pick up Dancing in the Darkness: Spiritual Lessons for Thriving in Turbulent Times anywhere. I'm excited to say that Target made it its feature book during Black History Month and sold out in Targets across the nation. So I just really appreciate Target for picking the book up. You can get it at Barnes and Nobles. You can get it on Amazon. But I would encourage you to pick it up at an independent or black bookstore. Pick it up at a black bookstore to empower a local black bookstore. And if you do buy it on Amazon, if you would be so kind as to write a review, not for me, not for me, but the algorithm of Amazon, and this is just for all those authors out there, the algorithm of Amazon is reviewed and looked at by corporations, publishers, to determine whether or not they're going to publish other books by certain authors. I'm not saying other books by me, but other black authors. They will look at the reviews and say, oh, look, people are writing reviews for said book. So we need more people like Mike D. Let's find some more authors.
Okay.
And so that's very important. If you have a book that you like, write a review on Amazon, because the publishers are looking at those reviews to determine whether or not they're going to release some more books in the future.
Awesome. You know what? Great book. Like I said, it's a great read. It's about 115 or so pages.
It's a short book.
And it's something that you can definitely keep with you. It has, I don't want to say parables, but, everyday relatable things in life. And it's definitely worth having. And go out there and get it. Write a review on Amazon. And again, Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III. I really appreciate you coming on this platform and look forward to speaking with you again sometime.
Absolutely. Let's do that. Let's talk some basketball, man.
Yeah, let's have a whole basketball segment. I feel like we got cut short on that.
Yes, sir.
All right, have a good one. Thanks again. You
All
guys
right.
have
Thank
a
you
good
so
one.
much.
Yes, sir.